Welcome. We're going to have a relaxed discussion. Right now in the room with me, I have Dirk, McLeod, Seraph, and Zendane, and Hiko. Hi, guys.
What's
Okay.
up?
Afternoon.
Hello.
Open mic. Let's go.
Good evening to the people who are somewhere in evening world.
Well, it's morning here in the United States. In the EU, it's probably just about.
It's 4 o'clock UK, 5 o'clock CET, so you should be getting some of the continental Europeans coming online.
Kind of like pre-end of workday news hour.
And our big list of Russian followers.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to do a couple things here, but one of the things I want to talk about, well, let's just start that in just a minute, is the new, what are they called? War Dec mechanics that are announced today. They actually won't be in the game for a while, but, let's talk about those.
Oh, there's also breaking news as well on the Eve Dec blog. 64-bit client, DirectX 12, just got a new post.
Wow. Let's see that in... Yeah.
Yeah.
When do they have a date now?
Just linked.
There it is.
I'm literally just reading it. Eve Q2 2019.
Yeah, something tells me. So, like, you just wrap it back to the War Dec thing there, right? They laid it out in a March, April, May kind of timeline coming up. Something tells me May is probably going to be the larger sort of thing that goes on. So 64-bit, I bet, would probably drop within that May.
Yeah, their first test on duality is March 5th.
Yeah.
So they've also confirmed they're not going to be running a 64-bit and 32-bit client side by side. Once the 64-bit client hits, that's it. That's all you get. So for any people with older systems, older OSs, time to look for an upgrade before it hits.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, they're saying only 0.5% of it. Yeah, they're saying only 0.5% of people are playing on a 32-bit OS anymore, but still.
Oh, I guess they can tell.
Oh, and the DirectX 12 stuff they'll be able to implement ray tracing.
Well, let's see if the graphics cards develop ray tracing first, because that's still very up in the air, as we all know.
Mm. So it's basically allowing true to life reflections in real time.
So when, say, you have like a Titan blow up, is that light source would generate brand new reflections across your ship. So it'd be like if your ship was facing directly towards the Erebus, the whole front of your ship would be bathed in the glow of the destruction of that ship.
Well, we kind of already have that to some degree when you see explosions go off in space, but one of the things that they could do with the DirectX 12 ray tracing is, for example, create like chrome style or partially chromed skins for ships. And, viewing that kind of thing, having another ship kind of fairly close to it, you'll literally be able to see the reflection of that ship in your ship. Like on the skin of the ship, that kind of thing.
I'm just thinking of like all the steel Cardinal skills for Caldara ships that are already basically chrome. Yay, we get a free upgrade.
Mm. Oh yeah, and also Amar ships with the gold. Like there'll be some really nice looking reflections on the gold the gold ornate ornaments and stuff like that on Amar ships.
But it also means that they're dropping DirectX 9, so it'll be DirectX 11 as a minimum going forward when that hits TM.
Well, it'll be something you could turn on and off, like other the modern titles that do have ray tracing.
They're stating it.
Now.
They're stating it there that you'll need a DirectX 11 as a minimum going forward, not the DirectX 9.
Oh yeah, okay. But I think we're pretty much there anyway, right?
Yeah, like DirectX 11's been out a long time, but as I'm saying is for people with older machines, they will need to consider this.
What was the issue? God, and I don't even remember when it was. I'm going to say within the last couple of years, where they recommended people going back to DirectX 9 if something wasn't working. Like there was something that wasn't working right.
Shaders.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was a particular generation of, I want to say, GeForce cards didn't implement. So the problem with it is when these DirectXs are released, that graphics cards have already sort of assumed certain features are going to be implemented, 12, 18 months beforehand. When DirectX was released, Microsoft did a bit of a switcheroo and went, oh, actually, we're going to do this, like 2 months before it released. And if I remember right, it was like a really old version of NVIDIA cards sort of assumed DirectX 11 was going to do one thing, and it went the other way. So when you run DirectX 11 code through it, the GPU just completely shut down, like bottlenecked it to high heaven. But that was years and years ago. Popping?
No.
Click, pop. What? It's terrible. I just want to say that.
I'll listen back and hear.
Should feel bad. Not you, but Matterall should feel bad.
Oh, and they're changing the minimum system requirement. This actually strikes me as something that's kind of funny, right? The nature of 64-bit applications means that they utilize more memory. Well, and that is really the reason why they're creating the 64-bit application, right? So we'll be able to access more memory. As such, we'll be increasing their minimum memory requirements for EVE Online from 2 gigabytes to 4. Now, okay.
If you don't have 4 gigabytes in your system nowadays, oh my god, I don't even understand how you can run Windows.
I get by getting rid of 32, right, and going to 64 that it will just become more memory intensive. Therefore, they have to change their minimum requirements, right? But obviously, if it's going to a 64-bit client that can access more memory, my God, I hope most people out there are at least running 8 gigabytes of memory, anyways. But
oh, by the way, Matterall, it seems your microphone isn't going through the stream.
Yeah, I had it muted because I'm typing and I don't want to type over you guys. But I'm back, and I'll be more careful.
Oh, this applies to Matterall Mac users. One question does, of course, remain. What about those pilots who are playing on the Mac client? Fear not. We're currently working with our partners to ensure that all of the above also applies to the Mac client, too. We'll have more information for our Mac users as soon as we've made more progress with the Mac client and are ready to talk more about transition plans for those players on Mac OS.
Yeah, the transition is going to be by Windows.
If memory serves me right, Metal, the new API for Mac, is fairly compliant with a lot of the features of like DirectX and Vulkan and that sort of stuff, so it shouldn't be too hard to code for Mac.
Matterall, I always loved it back in the day when I would walk into a Babbage's or like one of the old software stores that used to exist when we were kids, and like I'd be over there with a bunch of people over on the PC side, and there'd be that one lonely guy looking at the 5 games that could work on the Apple wall.
The selection of 3 games, and they were all like, you could probably find them.
Age of Empires 2 or something.
Or no, you can find them on a web browser somewhere. Like they're just not very powerful. That's why Mac users have such an affinity for Bungie and Blizzard. Those guys actually made games at the same time for Windows and Mac.
Well, they were originally. Well, I know Bungie originally was a Mac developer from the start.
Until Microsoft bought them and then shut all that down. It's like, oh, those are one.
And you lost the exclusivity of basically Halo was going to be the breakout Mac game.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's terrible. Oh, well, the problem is, and Windows allows you to tinker, and I don't know about you, but I love tinkering with things, and I always break my machines. So if I build a gaming machine, I end up like at some point just destroying it. So I
It's
thought,
pretty hard now on modern OSs to get it to the point where you break it. Most of them will sort of throw an error and stop you before you get to that.
yes, it's much harder to break it now, which is okay. But then you have the whole world of viruses and
Macs
also,
have viruses too.
well, not I've never actually. One time I got hit by a virus on Mac. In PC, every so often it would just come. It would somehow get infected. Actually, that's not true. The last few years, I used it responsibly, and it didn't crash. So maybe it's getting harder. Oh, look at that, a subscriber. Yeah, but and we can do this. You want to duke out Mac versus PC for a few minutes? That might be fun. But I've stuck with Mac. The thing that pulled me into Windows for the last 2 or 3 years, prior to the last few months, was Eve Online. Like I kept saying, well, I keep booting up on my iMac on the Windows side, so why don't I just stay in Windows all the time? And I did. And it wasn't long before I realized like why I hate Windows. And it's just a mess. And you're not really, I feel like in Windows, you're not really the client. You're sold off to whoever, loaded that computer with software. So you have all this like, trial software you can't get off.
All the bloatware, yeah.
Yeah, and that, you can't just take that off. Like you need to know some things to take that stuff off. You can't just say uninstall that, or at least, in my opinion, you couldn't.
It's funny because my daughter uses a MacBook Pro, and like I don't have anything. Well, I've got iPhone, right? But I don't really use. I've never used Mac products and things like that on the computer side. And I just had to go and buy her a new one over the weekend because she was like, "Daddy, my laptop is running too slow. I can't do this or whatever." And it probably is, I don't know, 4 years old or something like that. So we had to go down to the freaking Apple store and like I was planning on doing this after this semester was over. Hopefully, I don't know, getting some back to school special, because it's like, Matt, you go out there and buy freaking Apple. It's just like you're just paying retail.
If you're a student, I know in the UK,
yeah, you get $100 off.
Yeah, it's not much.
Only 100.
Yeah, over here it was $100 off.
It's like 15% over in the UK, so it adds up a lot.
Ooh, that is good.
But the worst part is, forget that. Fine, I've got no problem with buying her the laptop she wants, right, and the one that she's comfortable using and things like that. But more along the lines of like if she came to me with her Windows based PC or whatever, right? I could sit there and she said it's running slow. I can go and look for things that might be causing it to run. Like, I don't even know how to freaking operate her thing. It's like, where are your files? Why is this here? But like, where's the other? Like, I don't even know where anything is.
Well, I guess that's the point. It's what you're used to. But the point that I always come back to is, if I want to get something done, I use a Mac. If I want to mess around, I use a Windows. And I know it sounds really like Windows isn't a serious machine. Sure, it's a serious machine. But I have so many ways to sabotage myself before I ever get to the thing I want to do. And the one thing that kills me about the Windows environment is they didn't build the thing itself, and they didn't put out style guides like Apple does. So everything looks different. Every application looks different. And so you have to like learn every application on its own terms, rather than having Macintosh. Just seems like everything kind of works the same way and feels the same way. So it's a lot quicker to be intuitive. I consider it, if you want to go swimming in a lake, do it. It's great. You can swim all over the place. It's much bigger. But if you want to swim in a swimming pool, that's where you're going to see clearly what's under you, so nothing's going to eat you, and you're going to have confines, and you're going to be safe. Like, swim in the ocean, get eaten by sharks, or swim in a swimming pool. Swimming pool is Mac, the ocean and the lake is Windows.
Now Linux.
Oh, okay.
Linux like swimming in a paddling pool.
I'm kidding.
That's cave diving swimming. You get turned upside down, you're dead. You don't know which way to go. But yeah. All right, so 64 64-bit client.
There's an update out there. There's more of an update on their path to when it's coming, sometime in the second quarter. Let's all figure late in the second quarter, and if it comes.
So
And I would say, like, people would probably be like, "Oh, I thought the 64-bit client was coming this year. Why is it coming next year?" Blah 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 blah. One thing I would say about that is, with something that is so fundamental, like the actual stability of the client, like, you want that to be as rock solid as you can before you release it. So I am totally cool with them doing what they want to do, that, like, taking their time.
Is there anybody here that has kind of the knowledge and understanding of what it takes for them to convert from 32-bit client to 64-bit?
Not in here.
Oh no, my bad.
I mean, sometimes we've got some people around.
We did. They talked about it on, I think. Oh, where did we talk about that? That did come up. We did talk about it. I think it was on the midweek show, or Carneros talked about it. Or maybe it was an after show. God, I don't remember. It's all blurred now. But it's very difficult. It's a huge group effort. Everybody has different parts that they have to do. I know what it was. It's Carneros and Ashtarothi talking about it. And I think it was on the last talking.
It's not. I guess where I'm going is it's not just a simple thing, right? Because we talked about it, a week or two ago on Open Comms, because I had heard some people out there going, "Oh, it's like it couldn't be part of the reason why maybe players aren't seeing a bunch of changes elsewhere, because in the middle of this 64-bit conversion, right? Maybe there are resources that are being allocated to that." And then I was saying, "Oh no, it's no big deal." And I'm like, I don't think it's no big deal. And then Dunk came on and kind of explained it a lot better, to where I think I was right that it's no small deal, and that could be one of the reasons why people aren't seeing whatever features or changes or whatever that they think should be coming, and that it's been stalled or something like that. Well, this 64-bit thing I think it's kind of a big thing for them.
I'm sorry, I think
they have to get right.
I just took credit for your show. That was Open Comms, and it was Dunk Dinkle talking about it.
Well, no, I mean, I figure it's coming. I figure it's probably come up in some other places as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway.
But yeah. So, quick news. So last time we talked, which was was it Thursday? We were saying that Snuff had possibly reinforced the Pope Star, and so that was a new development. That's a keep star in high sec. It belongs to the Space Pope. So that did happen. They reinforced the shield. I asked Haiwantu about it. He said, "Yeah, the guys just reinforced everything." They were actually after Eve Mogul stuff, which they equate with Pandemic Legion. But he's been independent for a while now, and I don't know how independent, but he says he's completely independent, and I believe him because he actually had some words with PL at the time, so he wasn't super happy there. He moved to Mercenary Coalition, and by he, I'm talking about Jeronica, the owner of Eve Mogul. So Eve Mogul broke away from PL, joined Mercenary Coalition, and that was his security force to secure all his structures in Bazgaran, and that's Sink Layson, and other places near Amar and near Jita. But Mercenary Coalition went away, and so he then went independent and probably made some arrangements with somebody to defend his stuff, but I don't know who, and I'm not sure that's public information. So those structures in Bazgaran were reinforced, and since the Keep Star from the Pope was in the same system, they reinforced that too. I'm talking about Snuff here. But they weren't serious about knocking out those structures. But it looks like Snuff really just kind of... Well, what happened was they didn't come back to do anything on the armor timer for the Keep Star, which came out a few hours ago. And they didn't also come out and do anything on the Eve Mogul stuff. When I talked to Jeronica, he said it was taken care of. Apparently it has been taken care of. So all this to say, Snuff attacked stuff in Bazgaran, didn't come back to do anything further. Why? We're not 100% sure, but it was taken care of, or they were just kind of messing around. There's your update. Back to 64-bit client.
Is there more 64-bit client to talk about?
No.
Oh,
just
I was really terrible and basically denied that 2018 actually ever existed. So, like, for some reason, I thought it was 2018, not 2019, because I'm an idiot. I don't know why. But yeah, it's not coming next year. It's coming this year, obviously. For people who actually have a brain that isn't me.
Well, Q2 basically means, if memory serves right, that's before the end of summer, so it should be before the end of August.
Yeah, April, May, June.
Okay. So we'll see that coming, and again, we have to turn to the benefits for players. I always liked that Eve was on a 32-bit because I could open up multiple clients and not feel like I was missing out, and it wouldn't toast my machine. Because it would only ever use, or sorry, I had a multiple core machine, so I would just assign one core to Eve Online, and then I had the other 3 or 7 cores to be doing other stuff. It always felt like it was efficient.
Well,
I don't know if it makes a difference now.
Well, Eve is at the moment very much a single-threaded application, so having only one core assigned or multiple cores assigned, there is very little difference in terms of performance. The only difference you're really going to get with the 64-bit implementation is in the startup of the program, it's going to have a slightly bigger footprint, so you're going to use a little bit more RAM just running the program on its own, sort of idle. But it means that in the bigger fights is you don't run into the issue of having so many assets on the screen at the same time, maxing out the memory, and then the black screen, or, well, should we go back a little bit, where it suddenly starts screeching to a halt in terms of frame rate and responsiveness before it crashes to the black screen of death.
Yeah. It's mainly those crashes, the ones that basically don't come up saying, like, socket closed, the ones that literally where your client, like, grinds to a halt and then just drops,
freezes,
completely disappears, like, literally just disappears.
Pops away, yeah.
It's like, nope.
So yeah, hopefully it will help with that. Everything else, it should hopefully get around the stack limits in the the asset windows if they want to. Possibly, who knows? We'll see.
There it was again. Did you guys hear that African language? No?
Nope.
I know what it is. And by the way, I'm talking satirically from The Gods Must Be Crazy when I say African language. Maybe I should just drop that. I think I will. But the popping and the rattling, I think it's you touching your mic.
Right. It's probably falling down a little bit.
Yeah. That's what it sounds like. But at first it sounded like pop, pop.
Yeah, it's mic handling noise. That's all. That's what it is.
All right. Anybody seen The Gods Must Be Crazy? It's actually a funny movie, but I don't know if it's this. It's like, it might be like, you know, blackface for 80s kids. Like, you're not supposed to, that's like not a good thing anymore. But at the time it was really funny. I thought it was satirical and funny.
I think it's a classic movie to watch in Sweden, actually, for some weird reason.
Well, that's
Well,
not.
it's
not saying
it's
much,
labeled
is
as
it?
an indie film.
Okay. Anyway, off that topic, let's go on to Eve Online stuff. So the 64-bit client and going to DirectX 12. The big news here is going to drop in the second quarter, which we assume is after April. So it'll be ready for summer. And the DirectX 9 is going to disappear. Is that right? Yeah. So if that's true, I worry about Eve in places where computers aren't as new as, say, in Los Angeles. Like, say you're playing in the
North Korea?
Yeah, well, yeah, China. How do you say this in a way that's not demeaning in any way? People who have slower machines all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, because it's just not their primary investments. Some of us, the thing is, Eve is blessed with a lot of kind of wealthy players because generally we skew older. So you're about 30 and you probably make more money at 30, 32 than you do at 15 or 18. So if you're playing Eve and you're if you're playing Eve, that means you're probably playing video games, which means you probably have a pretty good machine because you have more disposable income. So Eve kind of benefits from having players who have pretty good machines. And if you've ever seen an Eve setup, there's whole beauty pageants about, this is my setup. And they show you their 3 screens and all their neon lights, and it looks like a spaceship. So, there's some amazing rigs out there that people use to play this game. On the other hand,
Well, yeah, to counter that, it's like I remember there was. I'm going to speak of another developer here.
or were you going to say something, or did you finish? Darf, did he disappear? Did he fall into a cave hole? Or did I disappear? Hello? Well, I gotta check. Am I still streaming? Let's see if the guys out here... everybody disappeared from me. I have no sound. I don't know what happened there, but let's see. Oh, okay. Where did everybody go? All right, we'll see what happens, but I can't hear anybody. And so if I can't hear them, they're not talking through the stream. So I don't know. Let me, I'll go out and then come back in. Well, in the meantime, I'm going to change over to do what I normally do, which is check flex prices to see if there's any relief. And there is not. Flex prices are still in a skyrocket phase. Oh yeah, it's me. My Discord is out. So I don't know what happened there, but it's disconnected. Yeah, it's coming back. Okay, there it is.
There we go.
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I was just saying, like, this is a classic case of Macs just working, right?
That's not.
I think
Mac.
Discord was having an issue because it was like you all died to me as well. Then it disconnected me and reconnected me. Then I started hearing Dirk and Mac, but you were still dead, Mac.
I heard everybody. It was weird.
Yeah, exactly. I was hearing Matterall talk about how he couldn't hear people, and while Seraph was but see, Seraph couldn't hear him because Seraph just kept talking.
Yeah, it was weird.
I lost everyone.
I think Matterall dove into the shallow end of the pool.
I was going to say I was cave diving. I was spelunking with Linux. So for those of you that just joined us, Linux is like cave diving, where it's super dangerous in rough waters underground with no light. Macintosh is like swimming in a beautiful swimming pool where everything's pristine and chlorinated. And Windows is like swimming in a lake where you have many more options, but you also have some murky areas.
Some snapping turtles.
I'd say it's more like swimming off the Blackpool Pier. You never know what you're going to walk into.
Glass on the floor. Terrible. All right, so 64-bit client. Hooray. I think that's been on a lot of people's wish lists. It might help some disconnect issues, maybe some. I think the one thing you guys said was going to allow some what is it? Ray lighting or something?
Ray tracing.
That's the DirectX 12. But I think what's going to happen is the 64-bit client is going to allow a lot more people to be able to take beautiful screenshots of these really big battles without worrying about their PC going on fire.
Okay. Well, okay, good. So maybe it helps the media a little bit. Well, damn, that looks good, doesn't it? That promise of Eve looking like, with a lot of fog, giving it dimension, giving it scale, like that is ideal. And interestingly, do you see this Microsoft DirectX thing that's up on my screen now? Do you recognize that image? It is it is based off, I think, the concept art of what they wanted to achieve. So this is like the actual rendition or rendering of what they had concepted out years ago about giving, I think it was maybe 3 years ago. They're talking about taking you to far off worlds and having cloudy stuff. I'll find it. But it's interesting. There's definitely a correlation there. I don't know if they meant it, but the hell coming out of a station, yeah, that's what they something like that.
The hell needs to be made bigger. Still.
It looked kind of small there. How do you, yeah, you just minimized a super carrier. All right, well, another thing that is coming out, let's go into dev blogs. The 64-bit client, and then War sometimes changes. Boop. All right.
Every test pilot currently flying in perimeter. Thank you very much, CCP.
Well, I want to look at that chart first. And so they made some changes right around middle of December. And they said you can't just declare war on anyone anymore. Now, in order for you to declare war on someone, the victim of that war has to have some kind of a structure for you to attack and kill. And what that did is it made people who didn't have any structures completely invulnerable to war declarations, so they couldn't be attacked. And that's a good thing because a lot of those groups that don't have a structure probably aren't that deep into Eve, so they don't have the time investment, the knowledge investment, the people investment to defend themselves very well. So look at the results. So percentage of non-mutual wars with at least one kill in a given day. That shot up, and that's counterintuitive. You would think that with less of an ability to war, that you would have a downturn in one kill per day statistics, but that's not the case. It went up. So why do you think it went up?
Well, okay. Well, because you've changed, I don't know, what, the fucking denominator or whatever. You've changed the total number of wars that are happening. Therefore, the percentage of wars with at least one kill, it's just math. But because you're basically pulling out what are a lot of wars where no kills existed because the defender side who did not want to be at war didn't undock to get killed.
I see. So this is a percentage, and it shot up from 10% average, let's say, to 15% average. So you're saying what they did is they took that 5% out, that there were wars where people just stayed docked all the time.
Well, yeah, I think it's the case of there's a lot of these wars now. The people that are involved in them are far more accepting of PvP versus before, where you had like the 100 and 200 and 300 active wars for people like Marmite and Vendetta and that, where out of those 300, maybe 5 of them were willing to be participants. Now, if you're putting a structure down, you're sort of going, okay, I know I'm going to be involved in wars. I know I'm probably going to get involved in PvP. So yes, okay, I will get involved and I will fight.
I appreciate that CCP has given us that chart, but honestly, I think that it's the wrong thing. We're not looking at the right number. What we really need to know is what the percentage of non-mutual wars with at least one kill by the defending entity would be. That would actually give us an idea of, okay, these wars, now that the defenders are saying, sure, we're going to get involved in a war, okay, we accept that by putting up a structure. Are they actually willing to fight?
Yeah, like we need kind of like the right data to look at.
Well, this data is good data, but yes, if you had the chart where it was, you could see how many times the defenders were killing the attackers. That would definitely be an interesting chart to see in terms of difference, because I think that would be one that is more of a drastic swing in terms of percentages.
I mean, it would certainly be interesting to know, right? And again, this is not a bad chart. It is just one. It is one data point of many that people would probably want to look at, right? Another one would be. It'd be interesting to see how many total wars were going on before, or what's the average number of wars, or whatever. They can show a chart like that, right? Then versus now, right? Like, did it go from there were 1,000 wars declared the day before to there's now 100 wars declared?
The other thing that I'd like to know off of this is how many of those were actual, I guess what you could call a combat, because I mean, sure, yes, I completely agree that the reason that we're seeing the numbers go up is because the fail decks, where there's a war deck and everyone just, the defending side at least, just stays docked and there is no war, there are less of those, sure. So what's left over, you could at least imagine, would be something where people know what they're getting themselves into. But I just don't. I almost get the feeling that we're seeing the data that says, look at that, people are more involved and engaged, and that's what they're trying to say. And I'm not saying that that's not the case. As you mentioned, this is good data. I just don't feel like this really gives us a clear picture that, yes, look how well we're working towards something where the war is actually something that's at least interesting for both sides.
Hey, Zendalia. Looks like you have fans out there love Eve lore series. That's in public Discord.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
hello everyone.
I mean, you know, basically what they did, right, was they put in something that said you can't just go War Dec people for the sake of having War Dec people, you know, in order to now, you know, just station camp or just, you know, Jitta 4-4 camp or you know, go after ratters, you know, free of charge out there or whatnot, right? They put this thing in that basically said, you know, if you have a structure, you're committing to making yourself war eligible at that point. You know, so people could, in a way, opt out, right? And they could find other ways of opting out as well. That I think that was broadly seen as being a positive short-term move, and quite honestly, is the largest piece of their overall changes to war decks that I guess we're going to talk about. You know, coming here. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you're ever possibly going to be able to make it where you know, wars are enjoyable for all. I don't think that's, you know, because some people just don't want to be involved with that kind of stuff. A lot of people.
You even get it with nullsec. Like when you join nullsec, you basically say, you know, I am willing to be shot at, and you know, there's loads of people in nullsec that just want to rat, just want to PvE. You know, it's the whole renter mentality. That's all they want to do. They don't want to get shot at. They don't want to do PvP. They just want to mine the good disc.
Right. But the barrier there, right, to, well, you don't have to get shot is don't.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that throughout Eve, there's always people that aren't going to want to be shot. There's always people that are just there to play the PvE aspect of the game rather than, you know, the PvP aspect.
So, I mean, you know, in the case of the data that they're putting up here, you know, while it's not all encompassing and shows all the things, I think we're still down the road of generally positive changes. And, you know, then of course we've got the stuff that's coming, because as far as I was concerned, quite honestly, you know, I said this to Brisk a number of times. I'm not even sure what more they need to do to it to achieve what it was they were trying to achieve. And that was, we don't want a mechanic in the game that is basically, you know, that basically tells a certain group of players that don't even bother logging in.
Well, you know, I think,
or don't join player corps, you know, in high sec.
I'm going to hold my thought until we get to the end of it, but let's talk about the other stuff. So here's the schedule. They've already done something December 2018 where they delivered the war eligibility change, which meant if you have a structure you can be warred against. In March, which is next month, they're going to fix some loopholes and bugs. In April, about the same time, maybe the same time or a few months before the new client comes out, the new 64-bit client, the removal of neutral assistance, which was explained. We can get into that if we want. And then in May, the new features for War Decs comes in, and that is the headquarters for an alliance, or is it a corporation? We'll look at that actually.
Whoever is the war decking entity. So it could be a corp. It could be a corp against something. It could be an alliance against something. But whatever, there has to be a.
Yeah. So the point is that you've got to put some skin in the game. You have to put something out there to be destroyed. And if they destroy it, you're done. Like, your war deck is over.
The war cost simplification is amazing, by the way.
War cost simplification is here.
Yeah, that was hilarious. And the TLDR as well. There's a TLDR somewhere as well, a YouTube video that was just perfect.
So they had this huge formula before that depended on the size. So right now, if you War Dec someone, because this hasn't changed, it's still the case. There's this huge formula on how many members they have, and so they made this little graphic here that I have highlighted. And so in the May release, it's going to cost 100 million ISK flat. Is that right?
Yeah, it's flat. It's a flat rate going forward.
That's pretty expensive.
I see. I was going to say it still seems cheap,
No?
but
Well,
like,
it was.
they're
Gotta
working
qualify.
it. They're working
got-
it off of the average of what War Decs have roughly cost, right?
Yeah, it
What
was.
the-
It
what
was.
the
It was a
top limit
sliding.
before?
It was a
Wasn't that like
sliding scale
500?
before.
Hold on,
Yeah,
one at
it
a
was a
time.
sliding
Go ahead,
scale
Sarah.
before.
Sarah,
So you
sorry,
started
go
off. So you started off at 50 if you had like very few players, but it only took 50 or 60 players, and you were well past the 100 million mark, and it capped out at 2,000. So if you had, I think it was 2,000 players. If you had 2,000 players, you were 500 million. Any more, 500 million. That was.
So does that mean that the Marmites will actually save money now?
I think so. Now,
You put it into structures.
This goes back to kind of the math of changing the denominator, right, from before, where when they sit there, because it's right there, and I'm reading it off of your screen, Matterall, so hopefully it's not changing, which is a lot easier to calculate in your head. Not coincidentally, 100 million ISK is quite close to the average war bill over the last few months. Okay, now, if you take out all of those war decks that were in there that were, against small entities and things like that, right, that maybe just aren't going to happen anymore. Like if you take out kind of that lower end spectrum, really where did War Decs typically go in pricing before? I think that was it capped at like 500 million or something like that?
Yeah, it was capped at 500. I suppose the better question if it would be is if you get rid of all the failed decks and all the ones that didn't have any activity, what was the average war deck prices to ones that had combat, or at least combat that had losses on both the defenders and attacking sides? That would be an interesting thing to find out.
Yeah.
Because I can see that being far higher than this 100 million, 50 million is scary. I can see it being in the 250, 300 area.
I have to wonder whether they actually looked at it as an ISK sync kind of calculation and just chose an average that would potentially mean that the ISK sync would be somewhat similar to what it is now, like in an overall perspective.
But it also doesn't unfairly punish smaller corps. So, like, speaking from test here, is like whenever we put up a war deck to people, it's 500 million flat out. We're 500 million all the time because of the size of us. But if you said to people that have 10 or 20 mans in their corp, especially people that are based in high sec, and you go, oh yeah, you want to war deck the person who's trolling you on your Athanor or something like that, it's 200 million ISK a week. That's a lot of ISK for people in high sec.
No, it's
Yeah,
not a lot
that's
of
true.
risk.
This
That's
is kind
not
of
true. I mean, you have to be really bad at this game if you have problems as a corporation to get 200 million or even 300 million in 1 week. That's really nothing in terms of risk.
No, it's not. But is 200 million a week worthy of like kind of what he just described? You may sit there and go, well, shit, I'm not paying 200 million for that. Like 200 million may be easy to come across, but like it's still not worth it for a week's worth of trying to get that guy without concording.
And also, come out and all set guys here. We're not talking about earning 200 million as a corp in nullsec. We're on about earning 200 million as a corp in high sec. That's a big swing. That's a big.
No, but it's not. I mean, I have a corp in high sec. We're actually at war at the moment against some. We're 10-man corp, but we've gone up against the Marmites, and I've actually spent way too much money on trying to recruit what is supposed to be mercenaries in high sec as well. And 200 million is really nothing. I mean, you're still talking about going to war where you're going to fly ships that will probably cost at least 100 million apiece. So if you really can't afford those 200 millions, then you're so far away from being able to do anything war-like anyway, in my opinion.
And we are talking here about people who are declaring war. We're not talking about if you're on the war receiving end, right? I mean, like it costs you nothing to have a war declared against.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but you actually do pay money if you take allies into wars. But that's not what we're talking about. No.
I don't know. This is kind of one of the problems that if you want to simplify down to a flat tax, a flat fee, right? That you want to make it so that it doesn't penalize smaller entities for using it. But on the flip side, larger entities who can absolutely afford it and will, are probably from this going to pay a lower cost for their worth thing. However, if you've also created a scenario where wars are fairer in how they are declared and under what reasons you might choose to do that, I'm not even sure that cost comes into it at all anyways. Well, hold on. Can I tell you what I think the answer will be? People who don't want to be War Decked are going to say it's too low. And people who want to be War Decking people are going to go, it's just fine, thanks.
Sounds about right.
I did it again, so I'm not going to... Okay, you guys are just going to have to hear me type. The question is that I just asked, and I'll ask it again in chat. People in chat, tell us if you think the price is too high or too low for these war decks at 100 million ISK. 100 million ISK per week. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm not going to mute myself anymore because I get Windows stacked on top of OBS and then forget to unmute myself. Or I don't know. I have to figure that out. Maybe I'll push a button on this thing over here. Okay, so yeah, let us know what you think in chat. We want to know 100 million ISK, too high or too low for, or is it just right for a War Deck rights?
The porridge of War Deck.
Has CCP reached the Goldilocks zone with the 100 million?
I would like to see this as something they come and revisit. This could be the first, benchmark of this is the new CCP. We come and revisit things when we need to. So if we see it as being too low, they come revisit it, they change the price. It's that's a simple change. If they can do this, we're looking.
Yeah. So Tamaya Cowboy says too low, should be $1 billion. I would agree.
$1 billion might be a bit excessive, isn't it?
I got to be honest.
Possibly.
I don't have a problem with having a calculation that takes into account a number of variables. I honestly don't think that was ever one of the problems with the War Deck system, was that it took into it took into account the size of the war decking organization versus the size of the organization being war decked, or vice versa. I think it's fine to have some granularity in that sort of stuff, because it does take into account some things that that do kind of matter. Mm-hmm. If you have an organization with 500 people and you're war decking somebody with 10, I don't know. Maybe it should have to be.
Well, the other thing is, as well as guys, we're not thinking about is you actually need a structure in space. So you've already got $600 million ISK on the line as a bare minimum, let alone we're talking Asbels and forts and that sort.
I mean, you never know. It might end up
Poco out there, but
it might at some point be reconfigured to be, something to do with how many structures you have up in space.
Well, instead of thinking this in terms of the money and how much somebody can earn and such, let's think about why. Why is there a war in high-sec? Let's put aside, the high-sec content creators who make sure the Jita undock and the perimeter Stargate are safe. Let's just put them to the side for now.
Wait. Before we move in that direction, I just want a little more on chat here. Should be the average income and assets of corporations involved. I think that's really interesting, right? Corporations. Yeah.
My personal belief on this is it shouldn't have to do with money. It shouldn't have to do with the size of people or the assets of the people. It should purely and simply have to do with the sex status, the average sex status of the corporation or alliance that's being war decked versus the corporation or alliance that's declaring war. alongside the standings of the areas that they want to war deck in. So, like, if they want to war deck in Galente space, like, it takes into account the Galente, like the average Galente, standings of both parties.
Hmm.
Because I personally
interesting.
believe that the idea of paying money for a war to shoot people in high-sec space has to do with paying off officials to look the other way, right?
Well, I don't know if
To me, logically, that's how that works.
logically you're buying permission to fight whether the other
Yeah.
person wants to or not.
And so if you're buying off people to look the other way, if that person is good friends with the person that you want to fucking shoot, then
But
obviously
the
that
Navy's-
person's going to be like, well,
I
you're
don't-
going to have to pay me a lot more.
But I
Sorry.
don't think the Imperial Navies are the ones that are killing you. It's Concord, which is an anti-player force in the game.
Right.
So it's not like Amar's because you're friendly with Amar, Concord's going to protect you better in Amar. They have nothing to do with Amar.
But then it should have something to do with the sex state, to do with your
But
security status or
hasn't
your
the
group's average security status.
Hasn't the law perspective been sort of disregarded though? Because if you take it from that standpoint where you bribe officials and they will look the other way, can't you counter bribe them? Like if these guys will pay you 200 million to shoot us, can't we pay you 400 million and they can't shoot us anymore?
Yeah, the counter offers. I think that's an idea that's been kicked around. It's like a bribing. It's like an auction system. It really puts more pressure on the new guys because the old established alt corps can fend off the war decks pretty easily because they've got money. But the new guys, they don't have that money. So maybe that's why they said that's not a good idea. I don't want to shy away from what Zendane's saying. We'll get there in just a second. I just want to give a little more time to chat, see what you guys think about that, how much it costs. And later, right after Zendane's question about why we war deck, I want to think about this differently. Now, CCP's already made a move. They're going in a certain direction, but I think they got it totally wrong. I'll tell you why.
Can I have a comment on the cost as well?
Yeah.
Because actually when we were starting getting war decks in HiSec, there's a huge war deck thread in the forums, the official Eve forums. I don't know if you guys ever looked through it. It's quite chaotic. But from what I understand from other HiSec operations as well, what most people consider to be broken with the old war deck and still the current war deck system was the way people were doing war deck carpets, like the Marmites and Pirate and Riot and those types of corporations, where they will literally war declare hundreds of corporations, not always that many, but at least 100, and just sit basically camping on the highways going from Jita to Amar or outside Jita 4-4 and that type of stuff. And one of the things that people did bring up was the fact that they could do this against so many small newbie corporations to little or no cost, like basically 50, 100 million to war deck a new corporation with 15 members, and they could do it on so many people that you basically turn HiSec into nullsec because you're going to have so many potential targets. And I would say that that's why the cost of wars actually do matter as well. And I would say that personally 100 million is quite little. I would like to see a system where the cost goes up. The more wars you have, the more expensive it gets. So the small corporation that doesn't have that much ISK maybe could still do 1 or 2 war decks against a rival in a system. But if you have 30 war decks, then it starts increasing quite rapidly.
Oh, interesting. So if you're just a war deck group, that you're going to end up paying more. I want to point out, Audenster says, what about if we made wars different costs? Your war is only valid in certain systems, i.e. you can declare war in one system, one constellation, one region, and it costs more and more, I assume is what he means.
I mean, I kind of like that.
Whoa. And Vari Online says 500 million he thinks is better for a war than 100 million. We good, or you guys just quiet?
Just quiet. That's
All right. So here's, I think Zendane, you asked a question. You want to ask it again?
Certainly. Where I was going with this is why do people fight? I mean, again, let's put aside, let's camp the Jita on dock, let's camp the perimeter Stargate. Let's put that off to the side. Why do people fight in HiSec? And my perspective in this, for those who didn't know, I was a CEO of a corporation that was in HiSec for a number of years. We left HiSec after a time, but for years and years, I had to herd cats whenever we got a War Dec. So I'm that's where I'm coming from this. And the vast majority of the times that we, as a roughly 100-person corporation, would get a War Dec was LOL. Very few times was it, there is a reason why we are doing this. And this was in the pre-Citadel days. So it wasn't, I'm messing with the Athenor or anything like that. Why do people actually want to fight in HiSec? What would be a meaningful cost for that? I mean, now we have citadels. We're talking about needing to defend the citadel, so we're putting out, 600, 800 billion-isk, whatever you want to put in for the base cost of the citadel, and then the fittings. Why would people even want to fight in the first place and try to cater the ISK cost towards that?
Well, I would say, apart from just strife, like people not liking each other, and that happens quite a lot because people seem to not get along a lot of the time. But the only real reason why people would fight in HiSec is when you look at resources, that's focus. The player-owned customs offices, I think they're called. Those are the only ones, because if you compare to nullsec, people fight over resources in nullsec, maybe sovereignty or moons or whatever. But there's no real reason to fight in HiSec for those reasons. Because you could say the structures, the Athanors, the moon mining, for example. But the thing is, you can just ninja mine the moon.
That's something that needs to be looked at, in my opinion, is the ninja mining of resources. So that's something I think CCP will look at in the near future. But in terms of that, then, isn't there more reason to fight in HiSec now than there ever has been with player-owned citadels and markets and POCOs and moon mining and that sort of stuff? So if anything, wars in HiSec should go up now because there's more to fight over.
No, it's the same since before they changed the requirements. I mean, people still have structures in HiSec, still have POCUS. The markets were there as well, and the offshore markets in perimeter, etc. But I agree with you.
But
with
you
the
couldn't.
mining,
You couldn't control.
I mean, you still can't control systems in that way. I mean, it's the same as before. But I do believe the one thing they could do is actually make it so. I think the programming or the code has to be in the client or the game as it is, because you have ledgers on how much has been mined at an Athanor, so you can see which guy has been mining this and this much. And if you were to connect that to the access list, so you basically have to be on an access list in order to mine that stuff, and if you're not, you could get like a suspect status. That would give a reason for people to actually start fighting over structures and moons in HiSec. Because all of a sudden you can't ninja mine it anymore. If you want to get a piece of that pie, you actually have to either be on the access list, basically pay the structure owner, or basically take over that structure or join the corporation that owns it.
I definitely agree with that. That's something that should be implemented, because being able to rock up with an Orca and just sit on an Athanor and mine it out under the owner's nose is wrong. Like, the owner sets up the structure, he's paying the fuel, he's paying all the costs, but he's getting none of the benefits out of it, and he can't do anything about it at all without going through a War Dec is wrong.
Well, I mean, you're basically stuck with two things. We were discussing this earlier, actually. You can gank it. You can gank the people, but the problem is ganking orcas is quite expensive and it takes some coordination. I've actually tried because we have, I think it's 8 Athanors in HiSec that we have, and we've sort of come to the point where we don't care anymore if people show up and mine all our stuff. It's just part of that type of gameplay now. The one thing you could do is try to gank them, but I tried ganking and I am really, really bad at it. I just lost my ship and I didn't do anything. So that didn't really work. You can do bumping as well. That's actually quite fun.
Can you dictate the terms of the asteroid belt? Can you change it without them knowing it? Or is it always visible?
Do you mean the timer?
Yeah, the timer.
They can't actually see when the drill is going to fire. You can. I think wasn't it one of the devs who made a comment on that on one of the shows?
Yeah,
but
you cannot see the exact time.
You see the rock floating.
You see the rock pulling, so you can sort of track it. So you can, if you inspect it over 2 or 3 days, you can see how close it's going to get, and then you can work out roughly within a couple of hours of what time it's going to fire.
So does that give you enough time to kind of get your fill from your own mining belt? Like, you know when it's going to come out, so you guys have to be ready. You guys mine up your stuff, and then you get the first part of it, and then as people find out that it's there, then you're going to get it raided, or the locusts come or whatever. Seems like do you find that you don't get enough of your own minerals?
It really depends on how much you have in your mining fleet. Because if you're a medium-sized corporation, due to real life and people being in different time zones, all that stuff, we could have a timer going off in the European time zone, and then we will have 4 of our European players mining the best of that moon goo that you get from it in HiSec. It's not really good moon goo in HiSec, but still, when the Americans come on a couple hours later, you could be unfortunate enough to have one of those thieving kind of mining fleets showing up with 8 orcas, basically stripping everything. And then you would lose out of maybe 300 million worth of moon ore or something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just figure that, you have the advantage of knowing exactly what the timing is, and you'd be able to get, your stuff. And, the problem is this, that you have a group that only has a certain capability, right? You only have access to 5 guys on whatever schedules they allow you to have access to them to do something. The problem really comes down to when a group that's bigger than you is taking your stuff, there's really nothing you can do, because you can hire mercs, but that seems to be totally broken. Like, those guys are all, there's just no legitimate mercs anymore.
There hasn't been. There has been, like, back in 2010, there were quite a few, like Noir, I think. But it's really changed, and I don't think you find some odd small groups. There's unicorn guys whose name I forgot. They seem to be sort of merkish still. But I think it's a really lost opportunity when it comes to this, because you do have that chance of making War Decs mean something. You by literally allowing corporations to take ownership over the moon mining. But still, you still have this problem before as well, because people were in NPC corps and doing the same thing. You can't War Dec an NPC corp, and these days you can't War Dec a corporation if they don't have structures either. So using mercs isn't really an option either against the thieves. The only way to actually get true conflicts out of this is to make it so there's a risk to actually trying to steal the ore from a moon that you don't own. And if they were to implement that means that people would have something worthwhile fighting over in HiSec. You would probably see Care Bears going to war against each other because they want the moons in this system, because they want to get the money from it.
Well, all right. We have a NN Quantum in there saying, get good. If you can't protect your stuff, you don't deserve it, and all that kind of stuff. Something we've heard over and over and over and over again in Eve. Adapt or survive.
Basically, the HTF,
here's the thing. Here's the thing when people say adapt or survive. If you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Eve needs to adapt and survive. These mechanics need to adapt or survive. If Eve's going to stick around, it needs a certain level of pasture grazers that want to stick around. And if you feed the wolves too much, if you make the mechanics good for the wolves, then the sheep are going to disappear over time. And then you have an ecosystem completely out of balance. So when we talk about, hey, we need to protect these miners, there's some truth to that, because if you don't have miners, everything starts to break down. And you know what happens, and this is what really makes me angry, if anything, is the guys that are usually full of that bravado have inherited it. They talk about stuff they don't really know. And then when the game dies, they take off. And they killed it for everybody else.
Well,
And they can play that, and they basically blame that
They're the
blame it,
complainers.
that it wasn't their fault.
There's a population of MMO players that come into a game, shit on it, destroy it because they got so much crap inside of them that's a good place for them to dump all that, and then they disappeared to the next MMO. And they go through games like Locust. So the community has to protect itself against that kind of like black and white, do or die kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, well, and we've also got to not use kind of simplified versions like adapt and survive, and adapt or die, or even we've got to protect minors, right? It's not about protecting minors. It's about protecting the integrity of the game that they want to produce that attracts people to.
Yeah, and you have to understand that, like, the game isn't, you can't take natural systems like Darwinism and shit like that to into the game, like, because unlike real life, players of this game can go play other games.
Yeah, and so this, and I'll just, and then Quantum, the guy that was saying that earlier, says, "Oh, I know, I'm gone from Eve." Okay, you didn't adapt, and you didn't survive. You didn't adapt your attitude.
He adapted,
or maybe he did. Yeah, didn't survive.
But in all fairness, though, you also have to acknowledge the fact that Eve is a game that also prides itself by catering to the rules. Also, I mean, it's the game is harsh, and it's always been intended to be that way. But it's like, I think it's like Dirk really said, it's about finding that balance where people are able to coexist, where you have both of those aspects, and it's been very tilted towards the War Dec guys for so many years, for example.
I think that we're stuck in the same old, like,
this whole thing has been old.
Yeah.
I stepped away, it was old. I came back, and it was like, and I'm talking just in the last few minutes. Like, it's like the old rehashing of the word.
This goes on for years.
The old rehashing of the word.
This goes on for years and years, but
the old rehashing of War Decs, the old rehashing of ganking, the old rehashing of risk.
This is where I think CCP made the wrong turn. They're basically band-aiding, I hate to put it that way, but they're basically playing within the confines of what's been imagined so far, and I think that's wrong. If I were coming into this game fresh, right? This game isn't an exciting game in and of itself to play. It is an exciting game to think about, at least for some of us. I think of a lot of us, and a lot of people who don't play Eve because it's too complicated, at least love to hear about it. They love the stories. They love how dangerous it is, and how some of the really interesting and also terrible things that happen in the game spark the imagination for all gamers and people who like science fiction and stories in general. So those are the people that say, let me take a look at this game. I've tried it once or twice, couldn't get into it, too difficult. But when you're looking at the game and coming into it without any of this stuff, all this insider stuff that we know, you're basically saying, wow, corporations can war each other in the future? That's really interesting. That is really interesting. You don't want to take that away. The problem is it's linked into all this. How much do you pay for the ability to kill people who don't want to be killed inside of a high-sec area? It just doesn't make any sense. Like, they should literally completely decouple making war declarations against groups in high-sec or empire space, period. That should not even be a thing. I think what you should do is you should push War Decs out into nullsec, and you should make everybody pay for the ability to fight each other.
No.
Well, at the moment, there's a best of both worlds at the moment, because you can't declare war against someone who doesn't have a structure. So,
Well, but if you're in deep space, you pretty much have to, don't you?
But you don't need to declare war. It's just an area where violence can happen, and there's no sanction.
Yeah,
but you should. You should. No, listen. You have to pay taxes out in deep space. Why shouldn't you pay for that kind of stuff?
What taxes do you pay out in deep space?
To pay taxes.
The only the only taxes you pay in nullsec are the system cost index and some minor broker fees. All the other taxes you pay are collected by your alliance, so you need to go speak to your alliance if that's your biggest problem. And to regard your question about getting rid of the War Dec system for HiSec, no, that makes no sense, because then you cannot destroy anything in HiSec. So,
You still have ganking.
Problem is yes. How do
you
you
mean structures,
gank
right?
a Fortiser? How do you gank?
The problem is
Keepstar?
structures, which is okay. So if the problem is structures, then they've pretty much solved it by way of attaching the War Dec system to being war eligible, whether it be attacker or defender. You have got to have a structure.
Well, no, because Matterall is saying get rid of War Decks full
I-
stop. They don't exist.
Yeah,
in
he's
HiSec,
wrong, but-
which can't work. You fundamentally cannot work.
No,
Because
no,
all
no,
I'm going to say is when you go into perimeter or say like Ashab or Khanid or anything like that, and you literally cannot load the system because there is 6,000 Astra Houses, Reiteries, and other citadels just sitting in the system, I'll blame you, Matterall. I'll blame you.
Okay. Well, I wasn't saying get rid of war decks. I think war decks are great. They're imaginative. They're visionary in that. I mean, it really plays into the sci-fi milieu. So what you need to do is say, if you want to go to war, all that has to be on the books in some place. Like you almost have to register to go to war in outlaw space as well. And then I think you remove it from this whole like, can we buy a few people to gank that don't want to be ganked? That whole thing goes away. And I'm not just talking about new players, because we know they're protected and everything else. I'm talking about players who want to play solo and have a few structures, and they really want to get into this whole optimizing their production capability without worrying about it going away and all their stuff going away and all their work being ruined. So it kind of eliminates that kind of ugliness, I think. But you still have, you still have the idea that corporations can go to war with one another. And also, I think it should also work like kill. It should also be a. This might be totally wrong, because it could totally be worked on. I mean, it could totally be
Used, right?
Yeah, used. But if somebody is stealing your ore, they start building up a certain amount of resistance that or points that your alliance can then say, these guys have passed the threshold, we should have license to kill them, and have a one-sided war. So as people are doing stuff to you, it aggravates their or whatever their score is, and then at a certain point they have a tipping point where you have kill rights on them, but they don't have kill rights on you.
An aggravation index.
Yeah, because that makes sense. You go to the authorities and you say, these guys are stealing all my sheep over and over again. And the sheriff finally says, okay, I deputize you. Go ahead and shoot them the next time they do. That makes more sense in a frontier.
Well, the Moon is the only things left in HiSec that you don't actually get consequences from stealing, I think. Unless I'm mistaken. Because if you try to steal from someone's wreck, you get a suspect status, don't you? Same thing with a camp.
Let's be honest. Eve is not real. There are no consequences in Eve Online. You can do terrible things, and you can completely avoid consequences.
No, but I mean, in terms of in-game mechanics. That's what I mean. Not on a philosophical level.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I was having a really nice morning, and I kicked up my feet, and I was enjoying myself. And then a little red flashy light goes off. Now, I don't know if the red flashy light means I need to white knight, because I'm here for that, or we're talking about war decks. Let's get it on.
The slippers come off, the coffee gets knocked over and runs on the warpath.
I did have to step away for a few minutes, but did we ever get to the actual proposed changes that they just came out? Okay,
still getting there.
We've just been rehashing war decks at a high level concept.
No, I gave a whole nother view of how war decks should work, and it's not this piecemeal of what's the good amount to do the same thing we've been doing over and over and over again. I don't see anything new.
Let's see if CCP can get this iteration on things often but small.
Honestly, Matterall, if you when you do these like radical kind of idea kind of segments, you really need to get your beret and put it on.
Yeah, I have a brown beret. It's just that this is, when I looked at the War Dec stuff, I was like, poof, no imagination. And this is not like Fozzie. Fozzie's come out with some amazing things. But I think they're trying to work with a system that's already there to tinker it, to make it work a little bit better. And the system itself, I think, is not very good.
The system itself isn't ideal, but the thing about it is that whenever CCP releases anything new or anything fancy, it becomes very abusable very quickly. Let's get it to the point where abuse and exploits can't be used.
You know, when I saw the changes, like I looked at them and I thought, it's pure genius. It's pure genius. Like not only are they, I'm serious. Like,
Wow.
not only are they fixing
Fucking
the
genius,
two bugs,
CCP. You heard it here.
the two bugs that are, like creating a celebratory atmosphere at PPD and test headquarters. Like all the dinos, they all have their hats on. It's party time, like it's 1999 over there because of these changes for those two bugs.
You
But
got
then
something you wanted. Okay.
the headquarters, like that's beautiful because what
Because you have a
it's trying.
Keepstar.
Well, no, it's not just that, because the Keepstar could die. Like it easily could. But what it does is it creates a focal point for here is your war. And if someone is irritating you, you can either pay mercenaries or whatever you have to do to kill that headquarters. Because right now, you know, the kind of quote, you must have a structure, unquote, that structure can be freaking anywhere in HiSec, hidden in some random moon in some random system, and you'll never be able to, attack it. Even though you are at war, with this other corporation, you can't attack it. You can't get to where their, supply route.
Can
or
you
whatever.
put it in a wormhole, by the way?
No. It can only be in HiSec.
Okay.
So it's in some random system that has 2 jumps a month, on the 17th moon kind of thing.
Right.
And
But
you'll never be able to attack.
it will be known where that is.
Right.
You can only do so. Will it be a case of you can only declare war in HiSec if you have a HiSec structure?
Yes.
That can be turned into a headquarters when you do so, like
yes,
or yeah, because I was kind of thinking like if the headquarters gets automatically assigned only because you only have one structure, but your structure's off in nullsec or whatever, like surely that will break the system as well.
Yeah.
So it must be a HiSec only thing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Might I just redirect ourselves back to back to the dev blog and kind of take this in the stages that it's coming out, right? Because the HQ thing, which I do think is good in some ways, and it has some issues, right? Is literally the last point that's not coming until May. But in March, right, the first thing that's coming out in just a couple of weeks is they are fixing these loopholes, okay, and bugs that I mean, these things, whether or not they ever changed the War Dec system at all, right? These were literal loopholes and bugs even to the old system. They were bullshit that needed to get fixed, but because CCP wasn't looking at War Dec's one iota, even loopholes and bugs weren't getting fixed. But here they are, right? So you got things like the head fake fix. I
don't even know what that is, but
let Ron describe it, because honestly, at this point, Test is one of the groups who are using War Decs not just for the sake of going after miners and things like that, right? They're using War Decs in kind of the base way that I think CCP envisioned war that takes place in HiSec.
So the head fake one, that wasn't, that was probably 10%. The big one is the inversion bug. That is the one that I think that more people knew about. It's the one that I always refused to talk about on air because I didn't want to give the steps, because the steps are quite easy. And basically, what it allows is Matterall declares war on Ron, right? Because Matterall wants to kill Ron's structure. So what does Ron do? Ron joins an alliance, which in turn turns the War Dec from me being a defender to me being an attacker, and then I leave the alliance.
You're
Now,
missing a step there, because the alliance that you're joining has to be the aggressor in the war. So what would have to happen is Matterall
right.
declares war and Run. I declare war on Matterall. Run now joins me, Seraph, which means you fall under my war. You now leave my alliance, but you've still got the war under my
Right.
state, so you're the aggressor now. So you've
And
got
now,
control.
and then I can time it and not pay the bill, etc. And then the war will end before my structure comes out, right? So it creates this invulnerability around structures, and it is constantly being abused. And one of the reasons I never wanted to talk about it, because the steps are very simple, is that if people found out about it, there would be 5,000 structures in perimeter, because all of these structures that were, on the Keepstar grid with the names and the kind of silliness were all, using that bug. And this is what we actually talked to Fozzie about in the Q&A after the episode, and that's when he revealed to us, and he said, oh yeah, we call that the inversion, thing, and this and that. And he's like, but I can't give you a timeline, but to keep doing the bug reports. And that's where we, kind of came from, which was even yesterday. Like, I mean, it was hilarious that one of our CTAs got canceled because they used the inversion bug to protect the structure. And then that the dev blog came out and we were just cracking up.
So
well, this was the funniest thing, was Horde actually formed fully for it. Horde formed for at least an hour and a half, a full 200-odd man fleet, went to perimeter, protected this structure, which we had no ability to shoot at. We couldn't do anything about it. Proceeded to sit around for another half an hour, tried to reinforce the Tataran system, and then went home the moment we actually formed. So they wasted 2 hours of people's time to half shoot a Tatara.
Was that a bluff, you think? Or you both are in test. What do you think Horde was up to?
We honestly think it was because the thing about it is all these structures are owned by I Choose You, or we assume they're owned by I Choose You. So either he didn't relay the message or something like that, and they didn't know that we didn't have an active War Dec on this structure, or the FC just didn't check. We don't know, but to form up for at least an hour before the structure comes out, to sit in system while the structure repairs, to then shoot something else once the structure's repaired, I don't know.
I think that there's a disconnect between, IC, if it is him, which I'm sure it is, IC and the Horde line person, because I don't know. I think that's a tough conversation to have when we say, hey, we have a CTA in 2 hours. Oh, and then 15 minutes before, cancel that. We actually used a bug instead, right? It kind of, why are you even playing then if you're going to do that? But that's just my personal
what happened
opinion. I don't know.
when Northern Coalition and the Dead Coalition and PL, and especially Circle of Two, formed up to fight the Imperium. I think it was DW TAC, because it was over at Keepstar. And all of a sudden, the Imperium was jammed out of the system. And there was thousands of people who were ready to fight, but because of that mechanic, it jammed out their ability to fight. So it happens. I just wonder if you thought it was on purpose that they would do this elaborate bluff and get everybody together to kind of make you guys get everybody together and then exhaust your capital to get people on.
Discussions were had
because
canceled
obviously
about an hour prior or so, 45 minutes prior. And it was, hey, no need. They used the bug.
Oh, because Horde has a lot of spies in it from you guys. I'm sure everybody in test has somebody.
We can see their pings. So when we saw their pings, we sort of questioned and queried about different things, and then we heard from other sources about certain things that were going on. We're like, right, they're definitely coming to HiSec because of that information. And lo and behold, they did.
Okay, so in March, is it March where that bug goes away?
Yes.
Okay.
A couple of weeks, yeah.
So what happens in April, Dirk?
So in April, some of the larger kind of things are beginning to happen, right? We've got we might as well just start with the removal of neutral assistance, right? So you're in a war against somebody out there, and they're catching reps from somebody who's not involved in that war at all, not on the assistance side. They're just a neutral, right? And yes, they go suspect once they do that.
This isn't just that, though.
But you've got to wait until they actually do something, right? And here they're changing something.
Yeah, so this isn't just that as well. This also covers the neutral link salts that people use.
Well, right, yeah, and I kind of wanted to. I think we should probably take them in two different pieces, just because of the way they're working, right? There's sort of active assistance, right? Giving reps, basically to somebody who's shooting you as part of the war, right? And one of the things they say under current mechanics, if a neutral character applies a remote assistance module, such as a remote repairer, to another character, they can receive a suspect flag if their target meets one of the following conditions: is involved in a war, blah blah blah. Where is the fix for this? After the April release, the penalty for direct targeted neutral assistance meeting the conditions above and occurring within HiSec will become a criminal flag and Concord. So you will get Concordokened if you rep somebody in, right.
Yeah. You've also got to be very careful with that, because it also states it has to be within the same alliance. So even if you're within a fleet of multiple alliances and you give remote reps to another alliance person, it looks like you'll be concorded for that as well, because the war is a separate war. Even though you're both at war with the same person, you're two separate wars. So from what I've gathered of that is if I was in test, Ron's in goons, and we're on the same fleet, and I rep Ron, I get concorded because I've technically fallen into one of those rules.
This doesn't affect non-war situations like ganking. There's guys that actually use logistics to hang around gates where people are being ganked, and they try to save them. This doesn't affect that, does it?
Not unless any of those people are involved in War Decs. And one of the questions that got brought up by Araya and has gotten brought up in generally is, how does this affect neutral assistance for things like incursion? And I believe that the answer to that, as it sits right now, is you rep somebody who's in a war in an incursion, you're going to get Concord.
Only if you have a criminal timer. Sorry, a combat timer. Combat aggression.
Right. It does require that. Let me scroll back.
So
is engaged in PvP. One of the things you have, if the person's engaged in PvP. So then it shouldn't affect incursions unless
that incursion person has shot at someone.
But what happens if the incursion person is shot by a ganker who gives them a combat timer, and then they can't?
Yeah. So yes, at that point, then they would get concorded because they do have the capsulated log-off time.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, it's going to fix certain areas, but it's also going to be a bit sketchy in others, because cross-alliance fleets now can't really do anything in HiSec. Ron, take hint of that as an FY.
Okay. So do you think this is going to solve the problem of remote or neutral assistance?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that dude's going to get freaking concorded.
Yeah, the moment, but so basically, it means that they can sit as a target to take damage initially, but the moment they get attacked by anything or they attack anything, if they receive any assistance, that logiship gets concorded. So you may get throwaway T1 logiships maybe as a reverse gank, but that's reach.
It seems like March and April are pretty much fixing what's already there, and nothing really new happens until May. And that really is just simplification and a little adjustment to what's going on. So the War Dec mechanics are being basically fixed, but they're not really
Yeah.
being enhanced or reimagined.
No, they're basically They're basically going back to what they did in December and removing all of the exploits, all the bugs, and just refining that concept. And then Quantum is asking about what neutral links happens there. And from what I've read, is it doesn't apply to you. They're actually setting separate flags.
It's a good question.
Can't you guys see people trolling incursions fleets with these neutral changes?
Oh, definitely. This is going to open up new ganking opportunities if you're very clever. Send a suicide catalyst into incursion, hit one of those expensive indicators. It now cannot receive any reps for 15 minutes, so you can literally end high-sec incursions with a single catalyst or a couple.
You go and do that with, like, say, a smart bomb, like a cheap smart bombing ship with a decent range. You hit a whole bunch of them at one point, maybe, that are actually receiving remote assistance at that same time. You may lose a battleship, but like you'll probably end up allowing Concord to come in and kill a whole bunch of things as well.
Oh, gotcha. And when you look at some of the fits that some of the higher end incursion people use, you're talking 1.5, 2 bill ships easy, and you're spending how much in that battleship? 100.
What I like about the War Dec changes are what they're doing is they are, kind of focusing the War Dec on what it was originally meant to be, which is a war between corporations or between alliances or whatever, and dangerous and costly, and less about how can we, abuse these particular mechanics to be as, risk averse as we possibly can, but still get the most benefit from it. And that's what I really like about these. And that's why I think it's genius. Continue to make this a harsh reality in where you have to pay and you have to put things on the line to fight, and less about, this particular thing wears out, and then I do this, and then I have this, and maybe I can kill some freighter kind of thing.
Now, the other part that is part of this neutral assistance thing, right, is the command bursts. They're approaching that different. Basically, here's the deal, right? And again, this still falls under the whole War Dec thing and whatnot. That somebody could be in your fleet who is not part of the war, right? You can pop your bursts out there for boosts. They're simply just not going to receive the benefit of those boosts. There's no Concord involved or anything like that. They're just not going to receive the benefit of those boosts.
Yeah, that's been used by all parties in multiple occasions, where you have like an NPC corp, alternate vulture, or a damnation just sitting on field giving out perfect links with complete impunity. So it just removes that aspect from these wars.
And again, and let me just read specifically what they say here. Therefore, after the April release, neutral command bursts will simply not affect a pilot that meets the conditions listed above when activated in high sec space. And that was, number one, you have to be involved in a war. Number two, you do not share a corp or alliance or faction warfare side in question with the assistor. And three, is engaged in has to meet all of the following conditions.
Love it. Genius.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry, go for it.
So test approved, huh?
Simple fixes.
I love it.
Yeah, it's simple fixes. They're not rocking the boat. They're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's these little changes that just massively shape the way the war's.
Yeah, the last paragraph in that. Neither of these changes impact assisting your corp mates or alliance mates in a war, since you're already in the same war with them, and neither of these changes apply to LowSec. The penalty for targeted neutral assistance in LowSec will continue to be a suspect flag, just
like today. You got cut off there at the end.
Yeah, just like today. Sorry.
I think one interesting thing as well is the fact that they apply this to duels as well, because there's not a lot of people engaging in duels, I think, but those who do tend to complain a lot about neutral logis showing up.
Well, I have to admit, I'm surprised that it's been a problem this long. Like, why wasn't something like that fixed a long time ago?
I think it's more of a case of when, like, it was never brought to CCP's attention because you would have tens of people maybe involved in these sorts of things, and then when you get something high profile like the Tranquility Trading Tower come into the game, and there's massively big fights, and then you start hearing about exploits, time and time and time again in very quick succession, about how they're doing this, that, and the other. Because I know, shout out to Bambuco from Test, like he must have put in 20, 30, 40 bug reports about these exploits that the Asbels have been under, all within the space of maybe a month or two.
I've been hearing about remote assisting neutrals into wars for a long time, but I thought that this was kind of taken care of. Like,
no, it was just one of those things that, it was like I said, kind of at the beginning of something a while back, that CCP was not focused one iota on War Decs in any way, shape, or form for years. They weren't even going to fix the little things apparently until they got involved with looking at the.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are. They are looking at the whole. They are taking into account both the loopholes associated with getting in and out of War Decs and things like that, and being able to drop structures while under the invulnerability window of a War Dec. They are getting involved with remote neutral assistance and things.
Yeah.
Like, interesting comment there from Maria Eve. He says, like, this is why the Imperium is great for the CSM. Debatable, but we'll go from there. We find a bug, we report it, and then tell CCP, watch us abuse this until you fix it. This is the big thing. So many people complain about broken things in Reddit and the forums and that sort of stuff, but they don't file bug reports. They don't file it with evidence, and so CCP turns around and goes, well, "What's the problem? We're not seeing anything because." The forums and Reddit aren't their bug trackers. They aren't the first line of this is a problem. The best thing you can do is you find something that's broken, file a bug report, and give it some evidence and go, I did this, I expected it to do this, but actually this happened.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it? It's logical, and I wonder if that's just where we are in the world these days. Like, we're going to take advantage of this until you make us stop. It's kind of like campaign finance reform, isn't it?
Except for you don't actually have people sitting there going, you know what, you need to fix this, and until you do, we're going to abuse the living hell out of it to show you just how bad it is. Like, you don't have that with pretty much. It's just people who are abusing it, hoping to continue to get away with it, until they figure it out. Right? There's a little bit of a difference there.
Well, normally the people who do that don't actually say that there is an issue with this being broken. They basically just abuse it, and they kind of, I guess they kind of expect that maybe the victims that it tends to sort of happen to may end up actually saying, is there something broken here because this seemed wrong or this seemed not right, kind of thing. But
by the way, I think one party in the U.S. anyway, one of the two major parties, is all about campaign finance reform. It's the other one that isn't.
We're not getting into that.
Okay. All right.
Steer away, Matterall.
Politics and stations. The next series.
But at the same time, they say, like, but we're still going to do it because we can.
Matterall.
No. But
Dirk,
that's what goons are saying, right? Like, we don't like this. We think it's broken, but we're going to do it until you make us stop. And so,
yeah, but they telegraph the fact that it's broken, like, very fucking clearly.
Okay, let me put it this way: like, we've had the massive blow up in Reddit about the burn cheat scenario because it happened for a week, and a lot of shit died. You imagine if Goons turn around and goes, "Hey, ganking is broken. We're going to do burn cheater across HiSec for the whole year." How quickly would ganking be looked at? Stuff like that.
It has that strategy has blowback too, and it's not that goons care about their reputation. I shouldn't say goons, right? The Imperium, um, it is the Imperium. I think has changed their image from when they were goons. Like I think there is a change, but it still creeps up every once in a while, where we're devilishly good at this, and we're gonna be pains in your ass until we get our way. And look at us. We can psychologically declare war on you and make it miserable for you until you pay attention to us. That is very goon thinking.
The idea of that is basically it's going to be abused by somebody at some point. It would be best if we signal the fact that it's broken, we show how it's broken to such a ridiculous degree, rather than just wait for the people who want to abuse it without actually saying that it's that it's broken in such a loud kind of fashion.
Well, and I think that in those cases, okay, and I don't just want to use goons. I think there are other people out there, but goons have been known to prove a point of something being broken. Number one, they actually believe that it is broken. Okay, not just that it is something that somebody can do to excess, but that they believe it's broken, and therefore they're going to prove to you that if you don't fix it, we're going to show you just how broken it is, right? If somebody wanted to get out, I don't think goons would want to get out there and lay waste by ganking 365 days out of the year, because I don't think that they believe that ganking is inherently broken. Now, if there's some group out there that wants to make ganking get dumbed down or eliminated in some way, and they want to go out there and try and do that, feel free. Mm-hmm. But you would think that anybody putting that kind of effort into something would have to first actually believe that something is broken, and not just a thing that they want to prove can be taken to an extreme.
Yeah,
definitely.
Well, and also, isn't that, as a counter to my own thing, like, isn't it a step better that they do that they exacerbate the problem than to, giggle to each other and get away with it for as long as they can?
Well, if that's what it takes to prove to CCP, like if the only way that CCP can learn or be forced to react to something being broken, okay, is you got to take their hand and put it on the stove.
Yikes.
Then I guess that's just the way. I think that the War Dec thing. Okay, and let's go back to War Decs here for a second. I think that the thing with War Decs is number one, CCP actually looked at their own data to see that it had negative consequences for their business game. Okay, and you had maybe it just happened to be the time when you also had people on the CSM who. Because there's always been people on the CSM that have been talking about what's wrong with War Decs, right? But maybe at the same time, coincidentally, that CCP is looking at their own data, they are hearing good cases being made for why this no good.
Why this no good?
Because ultimately, that's what we do have people on the CSM for, right? Is to hopefully have an ear of somebody and be able to make a good case, not just because they're from goons and not just because there's 6 people on there from the Imperium or whatever the hell the number is, but because as an individual and hopefully as a group that they can make good cases to CCP in order to convince them, that something is wrong or something needs to be righter or whatever it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was just thinking like, PL or NC or whoever else, maybe other groups like, I don't know, Snuff or whoever would, they wouldn't do the same thing goons would do. They kind of just take advantage of things as long as they can. Horde is a good example with a lot of these.
But is that good for the health of the game long term? This is the question you've got to look at.
No, and that's what I'm saying. It's a step better to say like, hey, we're exposing this and we're going to abuse it till you fix it, and but what it does do is it feels like it's one faction in the game telling the game maker, deal with our issue now, and I think that takes away from other issues they could be covering that they want to cover.
A lot of groups that we do have in Eve, because there are a lot of groups of organizational size that could pull it off, right? Could do it. I think that there are just certain times when the goons say, hey, you know what, that is something that we want to focus on. Now, we can go back to remember the ghost training of characters and continuing to train on after their subscriptions ran out at the old rate and things like that, right? I mean, here was an example where somebody could have come out and said, look, this is the way it works. We're going to do this to such a degree. Except that whenever you get something like that would be deemed not something broken, just broken, okay, but you having taken advantage of it is an exploit. Now you're getting into different territory because there were some goons that were doing some stuff where they were proving that something, but it was also something that was accruing them value in the process. And sometimes that can backfire on you if you're out there, trying to prove that. And then there are other people who are just taking advantage of it because it works, and CCP hasn't declared it an exploit.
An exploit.
This actually,
you keep getting cut
this
off.
actually reminds me. Don't know if you guys remember this, but way back in the days, Moo Corporation.
That's
when
way back in the day.
Yeah, but I remember when they literally took over. It wasn't Jita back then. It was July, wasn't it? And they effectively ganked everyone without Concord being able to stop them. To the point where the GMs had to stop in and actually ask them, well, I guess not nicely, to stop doing it. And they were like, nah, we're going to keep on doing it.
Yeah, I think there's different ways to get attention. And Moo was elite PvPers. They were pirates. They used to hang out in choke points that traders would have to go through in order to get their supplies to market. And they would just grief the heck out of people. And they were able to resist or tank the gate guns. Actually, there were no gate guns before Moo. Moo actually
they tanked the police, the actual Concord police.
Yeah, they actually had to create gate guns in order to kill Moo guys from those places. So that's how gate guns came into being. But yeah, they were able to tank Concord. And so basically CCP said, fine, what we have to do is make Concord ramp up exponentially up to infinity damage. So there'd be absolutely no way to tank Concord. And that's what we have today. And again, that was because of those early pirates in 2003 to 2004.
But coming in May will be the final big change of the War Dec system, right? And this will be the inclusion of this new thing called a war headquarters. Okay, so as it stands right now, and will continue to in the future, just to be war eligible, both sides have got to have structures in space somewhere, right? Whether they be upwell structures or whether they be POCOs. Okay, like you've got to own a structure in space somewhere, not including pauses. I don't think that's part of it because they're on their way out. Going forward, okay, from May onwards, you're going to have what you, if you declare a war, you are also going to have to declare a war headquarters. And a war headquarters has to be an upwell structure, not one of the flex structures, but an Astra House or a Fortizar or a Keepstar or, one of those. Okay. And you're going to have to declare that. Now, if after you have declared that and that war has gone active, if for any reason that headquarters goes down, okay, you take it down or it is destroyed, war over.
Yeah.
The defender doesn't have to have a war headquarters, just the attacker.
Oh, okay. So it gives people who want to fight back a way to end the war.
It gives people a way to fight. You're right.
And that is
Love
new.
it.
That's a new concept.
It gives multiple things. It gives
He cut off.
Yeah, I think he's probably having Discord problems too.
My computer's playing. My keyboard's playing up. Sorry. So just to reiterate, it gives multiple things. It gives the defenders a way to end the war on their terms, but it also gives defenders the ability to bring in mercenaries on a contract to end wars. I will pay you X amount of ISK if this structure dies. Deal. So
Right.
it gives mercenaries now another thing to be able to go, hey, I can help you in this situation.
That's a very good point. And maybe this fixes the mercenaries, because it seems to me that being a mercenary might have been a pain, because you had to basically do what the War Deckers were doing, which is sit around and wait for the War Deckers to come out. And that might have been a lot of waiting around. But now you have a goal. Go and take out this structure. That seems like, hey, we could do that. That's a thing that we can do on our own time. So that may be really interesting.
This might be overthinking it, but wouldn't it be nice if that could somehow be put into the contracts?
Or the bounty system.
Yes, I think the contracts for hiring mercenaries has been something that people have wanted for a while. I think.
Could you imagine putting? Yeah, you still have to join the war, but could you imagine you're putting publicly visible bounties on structures, so you can go, this structure, 10 million ISK if destroyed, or 100 million ISK, or whatever, and it's like you just have to click the structure and it just shows up 100 million ISK bounty on the structure itself.
Yeah, I wonder, Ron or Seraph, how is this going to affect what's going on between Test and Horde right now in HiSec?
Well, I mean, Test and Horde are these two huge entities that, our war between us, will continue. And there's not really much that either one of us could do to prevent that if, that was something that you didn't want to do. But we always want to be able to try to fight each other. But where it really plays into is the ancillary fights, is the Horde versus someone small, or someone small wanting to gank Test freighters, right? So that's always kind of this, the old, I think the old kind of corporation that was, or alliance that was really based around like the War Dec kind of enterprise. I think that's really going away, because where some very small entity wants to War Dec several people because they just want to sit on a gate in a super tanky ship and try to get new players or stupid players or whatever, get that freighter kind of going through, or getting someone undocking. That is really on the endangered species list, because now if they want to War Dec Test, to kind of get our people or pick people off, well, they're going to have to, declare a specific structure as their headquarters, and then Test will be able to knock down that structure. I think that's really the major point.
And they can't.
Yeah.
And then they can't.
They can't redeclare war for 2 weeks. So once that war has concluded because of the destruction of an HQ, okay, or the taking down of the HQ, depending on how it went, all right, the entity that declared war cannot declare war against that defender again for 2 weeks.
That's a big deal for Test, right? You can knock Horde out of warring you for 2 weeks.
Yep.
So they're going to need to defend their space base.
Well, they've already got a structure up in, I want to say, near Barnum. I passed through it yesterday and I saw a wrecked structure already up and running, so I'm wondering if they're prepping already for that. But yeah, it changes a lot of, shall we say, just casual warfare in HiSec now. You can't just go, oh, I'll join this war just for fun. You've got to put stuff on the line again now. So you can't just get the random mercs that are looking to catch the stragglers, catch a freighter here and there anymore, because, it's, okay, you join the war or whatever, or you declare a war on us. Hey, we've got a structure we can just go kill. Hey, PPD, you've got a structure to go kill. Have fun.
Well, Ryzek Gaming asks, can it be any structure?
Any upwell structure, not including the flex structures.
Oh, right, the flex structures. Okay. What are flex structures again?
Those are the little add-on things that you can put near.
Can they even be anchored in HiSec?
Aren't those like the flex structures are like the jump bridges and Sino mods and things like that, right?
Yeah, they seem
it has
like
to be dockable, something dockable,
right?
I was going to say, can those flex structures even be anchored in HiSec? I don't think they could, because you needed sub upgrades.
I think, see, that's why I asked what were the SOV structures. There may be SOV structures coming that you will be able to use in non-sovereignty space.
No idea. I know there's advertisements that are on about advertisements and billboards and all that sort of stuff as terms of Citadel.
Maybe
it could be that they just threw in that excluding flex structures thing simply because they were saying any upwell structure.
Yeah.
And there are upwell structures that do exist that are not like mainline structures.
Yeah, I think we're overthinking it. They probably just want a place, as Ron said, that you can dock, because that's actually a headquarters,
Now.
Well, this is another genius point, of this, kind of improvement, is that they're starting to realize, I mean, I'm sure they already know, and I'm kind of being facetious a little bit, but, that HiSec is all about being like little rules lawyers, right? And everyone kind of min maxes and tries to, and this timer, that timer, and tries to, does the 200 IQ plays on these damn mechanics, and they're just pre-thinking it. Hey, you know what? No, none of those. Don't even ask, because it's not even included in this package. Just start thinking about this, way that people try to get around everything, and just cut it out.
Now, since we're talking about the headquarters, okay, it should probably also be pointed out that they are making some changes that will make mutual wars better, right? Once a mutual war occurs, headquarters no longer matter. So mutual wars will not require any IS costs. They will not require any of the war eligibility mechanics involved, and they will not require war HQs.
It basically makes red versus blue completely free to do, and a good starting point for people.
Or if Test and Horde want to declare mutual war against one another, right? Then HQs and costs no longer come into it. They can just go shoot the shit out of each
other. Having that ability to knock Horde out of a war for 2 weeks would be bliss, and I think they're going to think the same thing. They're not going to want mutual war.
Yeah, I guess that's... Well, I mean, it's not up to Test if it's a mutual war or not. Either you declare war. I'm sorry. They declare war on you. Yeah, it is up to Test. If they get war declared on them, they will not counter that because they want to kill the structure and get two week break. So it is up to Test.
If you're the defender, you've got the choice to make it mutual or not mutual. If you're the attacker, you're just declaring war.
Well, and if we're looking at...
But if Test were to declare war on them, if Test were the one to declare war on them, right, then the other side can go and mutual.
No, they can't. No, it even states there. So what happened is one corporate alliance will be able to send invitations for a mutual war to other corps or alliances, and the organization that receives the invitation can choose to accept or decline the offer. So Horde can go, here you go, here's a mutual war, because we don't want to be kicked out of the war for 2 months, and we can literally go, no thank you, we'll quietly pass on that. Because
wait a second.
Well,
I declare war on you, you go, fine, it's mutual, and I go, oh, well, wait a second. I didn't mean mutual.
Well, wait a minute.
Mutual wars just get rid of all the costs and all the war HQs. But they... Carry on.
Sorry, here's a scenario that's realistic. Horde is putting down, or I Choose You is putting down structures to compete with your tax base so they can get the offshoring money that you guys are basically siphoning your money from that market area that you're in perimeter. While they're doing that, you have to declare war on them in order to take that thing out.
Yeah.
Is that right? And if
we'd have to do that anyway.
And if they win that war, you can't do it for 2 weeks.
That means taking out the Keepstar.
Because that's what's going to be your home base.
Well, it would make the most sense. I'm not the Sky Marshal. I'm not the strategic FC, but I'm just thinking logically here. You're going to make the most strongest structure your war HQ.
I'm trying to think of the repercussions of that. So if then Horde gets involved with I Choose You and says we're gonna merc for you guys, we're gonna be mercenaries for you.
Well, what if the structure that you're working out of isn't even the alliance that you're having issues with?
So
Wait,
run that
don't,
by me
don't,
again.
don't complicate it yet. Let me just work through
Yes.
this. So Horde then says we're going to defend you. I choose you, and we're going to fight Test for you. Where are we then? Is the mercenaries have entered the field, so now it's a mutual war between mercenaries and Test?
No. We've declared war on, say, I choose you. Horde comes in as an ally of I choose you. It is not a mutual war until either we say we want to make it a mutual war, or
No, but
they
you
send the
initiated
invitation.
it. But you initiate
Yes.
this war, so you can't make
Well,
it a
so-
mutual war.
So they
Right.
have to then say, so I choose you, then has to say to us, can we make it a mutual war? It's not something that you can just go, oh, because they've made a war. If the other person goes, oh, I want the war as well, it becomes mutual straight away.
But in this case, they wouldn't want a mutual war because that takes away their ability to turn off wars for 2 weeks. And they want that because that 2 weeks they can put down a bunch of other structures and again attack your tax base. So what I'm worried about, or not worried about, what I'm interested in is what happens when Horde enters that war. They can't kill your keep star. If they do, that would be a much bigger deal. But
Well, if they kill the keep star, we can no longer declare war on the initial war deck. So the person we initially declared war on, we can no longer declare war on. You have made me think, though, interestingly. So I don't think I read anywhere it states, so if we win the war, can we still re-war deck, or did we come under that the war ends 14 days sort of thing?
Well, I think the simple mechanics kick in, right? Which is what makes this, lovely. If, just like, let's like every morning, how it starts is, hey, this random corporation is dropping, a structure. Well, we can declare war on them because they've dropped a structure. They have a structure that is a headquarters, and then we can go kill that headquarters structure and then end of war. So it's not if they have 5 structures and we need to kill each one of them kind of thing. It's like we can kill one and that would end the war.
It's worth mentioning that mutual wars are going to be, as I understand it from the article, completely separated from the other war declaring system. So they are not intertwined anymore. You basically, either you get a mutual war from the start, or you get a non-mutual.
Right, Ron, I've just found a problem in test case in the PPD. I've just posted the PPD. If a war ends due to the war HQ going away, the former attackers will be unable to declare a new war against the same former defenders for 2 weeks.
That's a problem for you guys, isn't it?
Yes.
So you've got to keep eternal war on I Choose You.
We can't.
No, but how is that a problem? I don't see
because so we take down the structure, because he's set up this marketplace. We don't want him to have any structures in perimeter. We don't want him to have a market. Full stop. That's the aim. What will happen is if we kill the War HQ, which is probably the structure that he'll set up as a, shall we say, a sacrificial lamb. He's now war immune in that court for 2 weeks.
No, but he's the defender. He doesn't have to put up a structure.
No, he has to put up a structure, not an HQ, though.
Okay, what about if he attacks and he sets his market as the HQ?
I don't think I Choose You is going to attack Test. He's going to wait.
He does. He does. He sends out a lot of wars at the moment.
Well, that's an easy way for him to get 2 weeks of us not being able to attack.
Yeah, so I think the system benefits him. He's there. He puts down structures. You guys have to attack those structures or he's going to be siphoning your money. So you attack those structures. Therefore, you have a headquarters that you have to declare. It's a keep star, unkillable. And then you attack I Choose You structures because you're lawfully able to. And Horde fights you or doesn't fight you. It doesn't matter. You can keep up perpetual war, can't you?
Well, if he declares, then he chooses the War HQ. The other side doesn't have to have a War HQ and can't declare with.
Yeah, you're talking about Test declaring and having the war the keep star becoming their headquarters for that war. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, but the advantage for I Choose You would be to declare the war himself, because once that HQ is then destroyed by Test, Because, like you say, they need to do that in order to not have him cipher the money from the offshore market. And that means that corporation that put down that structure is going to have a two-week cool-down period before tests can declare war against it again.
I don't know if it works does it work that way? Because, like, let's say...
That's the way I'm reading it, is basically if he beats us to the punch on declaring the war, he sets his structure as the HQ. We kill that said structure, that corp becomes immune now for 2 weeks because we successfully defended and it's an enforced peace.
Right. So I'm thinking,
and
okay,
so
I see. So he's going to...
Test doesn't have to go kill that structure, though. Test could kill a bunch of other structures of his then, right? They don't have to go kill the HQ.
Is that's the structure you want to kill because that's the structure that's got the market in.
It's got zero tax on that structure.
Like you realize, like, he doesn't do this with just one corp and one structure. He does it with hundreds. Like, how many wars have we got going on at the moment, Ron?
It's like 35-ish.
But let's say Test goes on the offensive and he doesn't want to do that.
Then we're fine. But we have to beat him to the punch. So if he ever gets the ability to declare war on us, he can basically either get a free 2 weeks of immunity, or his structure survives because we don't want to kill it because that will give him that 2 weeks.
Okay,
immunity.
so there's an advantage to that. Now here's the thing: you declare war first. When does your war end?
When the structure dies, because he becomes war ineligible at that point.
Wait, you declared war. It's your structure that needs to die. And you're not going to kill your own structure. So you can have that war go on as long as you want to. If you
no, because that's the structure. Because he only ever has one structure in these corps. So that structure dies, he instantly becomes war ineligible.
Well, hold on.
Am I
say that I'm.
Does he
I'm
be
super? Because he'll have one structure down, and we declare war on that, and then as soon as that structure dies, then he has no structures and he's war ineligible.
I'm sorry.
And he waits out his 2 weeks, is what you're saying, before he puts another structure back into that corp.
No, I mean the thing is, it's all based on I choose you. If that's the one that's doing it, him putting down a structure. As soon as that structure goes out of the first 15 minutes, he's war eligible and he can declare war on Test. If he's the aggressor, the attacker, he cannot put that market structure as the market in it, as the HQ, which means the Test has to kill it. But once they kill that structure, that means the war is gone, and it's a two-week period before Test can declare war again against that corporation. During which, no wait, it's only the defender can actually. No wait, the defender can declare war again immediately. So that just
right. Well, hold on. Yes, you can, but not if you've destroyed the only structure that he owns in that corporation.
So he has to play a stand.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's the same as it is now.
And well, and that's what I mean by he then rides out the 2 week period, puts down another structure, and then redeclares war. Like he rinses and repeats.
Well, no, he wants these structures down to get the markets in. So it doesn't benefit him in any way.
And he uses different corporations.
Yeah,
I'm super excited about 12 hours after these changes go online for the bug reports that we're going to file. I'm super excited for that.
Now
we're ready.
Space Dwarf out there brings up something. You don't need to destroy the structure. You can get it to hulls, and then the market doesn't work anymore, right? Just keep taking it to hull.
As long as we turn it off into low power mode, I mean, then there's no market, and that's success to us, right?
And it also precludes that whole 2 week thing. It just because you haven't destroyed the HQ, you've just taken it to hull, and you come back the next time and you go through the process, right? It's just a constant rinse and repeat of just taking it to structure.
But then he still gets 24 to 48 hours every time that they run. Then if he has that with enough corps, he'll have...
Oh, Test, you're fucked. But that's all we have time for, because I gotta go. We'll leave it there. We're gonna figure this out after the show in public.
In closing, Test is fucked.
Talking to Stations Discord. Go hang out there and talk with the Test guys to see how this is gonna screw them. You have until May. To
figure this out.
You have some months.
This isn't a War Dec issue. This is an Alts Online issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and alt corporations and strategy and all this other stuff. It's making it a layer deeper. But if you can buy some immunity, I think that's super interesting. All right, we didn't get to any of the other stuff I wanted to do. So we just talked about 64-bit client and, of course, War Dec. Those are two meaty subjects. Tonight is Talking in Stations, the proper show, a midweek report with Ron. And do you have you guys are working on the show, Ron? Do you know? Can you preview anything, or do you want to save it for later?
Yeah, we're going to talk about War Decks, and I know we have a couple of guests, and I think we're going to discuss a lot of the changes and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So that's today, and that is at what time is that? It's
7 hours from now.
Okay.
8 p.m. Eastern.
Very good. That's 5 p.m. No, yeah, 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and I think it's 1 a.m. UTC, so Eve time 1 a.m., which is kind of late. If you missed that, catch the Sunday show at 1600, and we'll be back again on Tuesday for these casual shows, and they're at 1600 on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can hang out with us, jump in chat, and it's been great having you guys, everybody that's in here. Neat surprises, neat faces, and also for the people in chat, thanks for coming around. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap up. You guys want to say anything before we go?
Thank you very much, Matterall.
Root 2, click, click.
Pop, pop. All right, we'll see you guys.